In this video, we are going to look at naming covalent compounds, and we're also going to look at writing formulas. Most students find this pretty straightforward. The main thing is that you need to know the prefixes that are in a table that I'm going to show you, and then from that point it's pretty easy. The first thing we're going to look at is when you have a covalent molecule, that means that you have nonmetals. Okay, you are going to end in IDE. So whichever element's listed second, looking at it from left to right, okay, you're going to end in IDE. Okay, so oxide. Okay, and these names right here are not correct yet. Okay, this is just showing that you would just name the first element nitrogen. Here it's nitrogen also, and then you would end in IDE. Okay, if you've watched the videos on naming ionic compounds, this has been the same situation. But then you have to add prefixes to the names. Okay, and so I'm going to show you these on the next slide. Okay, but if you have one atom in your first element that's listed in the name, you do not have to write mono. Mono stands for one, and so you don't have to write mono. But for the second element, if there's only one, so for instance, carbon monoxide, most of you have heard of that. There's only one carbon, and so you just say carbon. You don't say monocarbon. But for the oxygen, because it's listed second, you do say mono. You say monoxide. Often we'll end up with two vowels that are next to each other when we use these prefixes, and so we just drop the first vowel. Okay, and so mono, if you put monoxide together, then you have a double O, and so you just drop the oxygen here. Here. Okay, so we need to see these prefixes, and once we do, it'll make more sense. Okay. If you have one atom in your formula, it's mono. If you have two, you use di, 3 tri, 4 tetra, 5 penta, 6 hexa, 7 hepta, 8 octa, 9 nona, 10 deca. So you have to remember these. Most students, it's not too difficult. Sometimes they get hexa and hepta backwards or something, but what you do is nitrogen, there's just an understood one. So we would not write mononitrogen. You just write nitrogen. Okay, but then we have two oxygens, so we say dioxide. Okay, so we use the di in front. So on the previous slides, we had just written nitrogen oxide, and that's not correct because it's nitrogen dioxide. Okay, if you have two nitrogens, you have dinitrogen. And then if you have four oxygens, you go over here. 4 is tetra, so you would have tetroxide. Okay, remember, so tetraoxide, we always end in IDE. You drop the first vowel if you have two vowels next to each other. So this would be tetroxide. Okay, so let's practice naming. Already mentioned this one. We have one of each, so we would just write carbon, and then we would have carbon monoxide. One oxygen, so we write it and we drop that first. We don't want to put two oxygens next to each other. Okay, here, same scenario. We have sulfur, and we have 3 oxygens. So if you look at your prefix table, we would have sulfur trioxide. Okay, all of these just so happen to have just one atom of that first nonmetal. Okay, of course there's these 3 examples. Okay, so we just write sulfur with no prefix. Okay, and then we have 6, so that's hexa. It's a prefix if you look at your table. Fluoride, end in IDE. Okay, this one here, we have tetra phosphorus. Okay, and I would, of course, I've run out of room here, so I would put that together, but we have 4 phosphorus, so that's tetra. So go look here. There's 4 phosphorus. And the next we have 7 atoms, so that's going to be hepta of our sulfur. So we have tetraphosphorus hepta sulfide. So you use the Greek prefixes to represent the number of nonmetal atoms that you have. Okay, you can do this in reverse is how I think of it. So this is if we have a formula and we want to write the name. Well, we can do the reverse as well. We can be given a formula, or excuse me, be given a name and write the formula. So if I see carbon tetrachloride, I know that means I have 1 carbon. Tetra means I have 4. Chloride is Cl on my periodic table, and that means I have 4. Okay, so we could do one of these other ones in reverse. So if I looked at this one, and let's pretend I didn't know this, tetraphosphorus. Okay, I look at my periodic table if I didn't already know, and then I know tetra means 4, and then heptasulfide, sulfide is sulfur, hepta means 7, so I have 7. So we can name and write formulas for covalent compounds as long as we know our Greek prefixes.